Scoonie Penn, welcome to the Views from the Shop podcast for the first time joining the summer guest series here in 2026.
Mhm.
As I try to do with any former player, did an episode with Ron Lewis a couple weeks ago, started it off the exact same way. As I explained to you,
Mhm.
as we were talking here before we started, I'm not old enough to remember you playing college basketball at Ohio State. There are a lot of fans who now are a generation or two generations removed from you
Yep.
playing. So we'll kick it off with just introduce yourself to Buckeye Nation and just kind of remind fans who is Scoonie Penn and kind of how do you want to be remembered as a Buckeye?
Well, first and foremost, thanks for having me, and you just aged me tremendously. Um, but no, you're right. Generations have been removed since I played at Ohio State, finishing up in 2000. I mean, yeah, it's 26 years. But yeah, Scoonie Penn, was a Buckeye for many, always will be a Buckeye, but wore the uniform, for 3 years. 1 year I had to sit out 'cause I transferred from Boston College. And had a great run. Had a great run, great career. Been extremely fortunate to, be inducted to the Ohio State Hall of Fame. Playing only 2 seasons, and create a legacy that I think that'll live on. And I think we'll talk about that as we go along and how that legacy become, and what is that legacy. It's just a thing where obviously Ohio State is near and dear to me. Making the decision to come here to go to school, leaving Boston College. A lot of people ask me that all the time, like, why did you leave? What made you come to Columbus? The coach at the time, Jim O'Brien, was my coach at Boston College. He took the job here at Ohio State, and I just wanted the ability to go look at other schools. Although I love being in Boston, I was at home. All that stuff was good. I think what ultimately got me turning to leave Boston College was the fact that the other guys in my class started to transfer out. The recruits that were coming in were no longer coming in. So I was kind of like the last man standing. And, I made a decision, and I think I made a good decision, the right decision to come here with the coaching staff that I had at Boston College that was familiar with me for many years. So everything just kind of flowed from there. And, you get to Columbus. And at that moment, for a lot of people who don't understand, Ohio State basketball has a lot of history, but I think there was a period of time that the program went through that we weren't making any tournaments. We really wasn't relevant in the Big Ten at all. It just became really tough on the basketball side of things. And the year I transferred in, it was sort of the same thing. But there were a couple, especially one bright spot that stood out. And that bright star spot was a Michael Redd, was a freshman the year I set out, and then watching him play, take off, doing spectacular things he was doing at a young age, gave me hope. But I already had it, from every day working out with guys, being in gym and practicing, and then knowing that also the following year when I would start playing, the Schottenstein Center would open. That was also a big draw for me to come to Columbus. The fact that I would be able to open up and play in an arena that was a pro arena. And at the time, you weren't going to go to any college campuses and find a pro arena. The Schottenstein Center was the first of its kind, and I just wanted to be a part of that. And I think we made it was very, it was a lasting impression. I don't know if that's ever happened where they open up arena and a team that won one game in the Big Ten previously now makes a run and gets all the way to the Final Four. I think at the time that was something that's never been done before, what we had done, and I think that adds to the legacy, of myself, of a person that was able to come into a program and help change the program. And we get together, the guys from that team those years that I was in school. We always say the success that the Buckeyes had after that. Oh 07, 12, going to the Final Four, all the unbelievable pros that we've had was birthed from that year. Like I really believe that and truly believe that because I think we took Ohio State. We just did something different with it. Ohio State had not been to a Final Four since the '60s or was the '50s, something like that. But for us to turn around and do that, I think was a lot of hope, especially for kids from the state of Ohio. You're growing up, and now you can say, "Hey, we have a team that went to Final Four that made major noise." It was something to kind of hang our hat on.
So there's a lot to unpack from your career, and you're helping Ohio State owned
Mhm.
the program. I think that one win in Big Ten play the year before, the year you sat out,
Yeah.
was still to this day the worst season of Big
Mhm.
Ten play in Ohio State men's basketball history. So 180.
Mhm.
But I mean, even your journey to Ohio State from Boston College, obviously you're from New England or New York,
Mhm.
if New York counts in New England. Um, how difficult was that decision? You have the known commodity
Yeah.
in your head coach and Jim O'Brien, but what was that decision like of, do I transfer out? Do I try to stay and stick it out here at Boston College, a new coach? What went through your mind there 30-ish years ago?
That was big. I was a freshman of the year in the Big East. I was all freshman team in the country. We made the tournament. We did well. We was a top 25 team. And then going to my sophomore year, we win the Big East. We win the Big. So after of my freshman year, sophomore, like I think yeah, it was different for everybody, but I think for myself in particular, it was different, like more different because I was in the middle of that. The fact that you have a kid that a local kid that grew up here, visit had an excellent visit. The coaching staff, which I knew because these guys recruited me, I was younger, so I had a really good relationship with them. And when it came down to it, and I made the decision to transfer to Ohio State, a lot of people questioned my decision. There was a lot of questions. Did I make the right decision? I mean, we was having a good team coming back at Boston. We would have easily been a top 25, maybe a top 10 team coming back. With the guys that were still there. Um, but in my heart of hearts, I just felt like it was time for me to go. I needed a new start, and I felt like following these coaches was going to be the best thing for my career. And I needed to be a little bit selfish. I know when it sucked because the guys that I was playing with at BC, I love those guys. I had a lot of family, a lot of friends there. But that team, those guys, we were really close, and I love those guys. But to get up and leave those guys, that was hard for me to do. But it was just something that I had to do because I had. That's why I started saying like this is one of the hardest decisions I ever had to make, and it was hard. And I don't know if I've ever really spoke about it publicly, but going home that year around Christmas break, the team had went on a trip. I couldn't go on a trip. You sit out. There's certain things you can't do. I went back to Massachusetts, and I didn't want to come back to Columbus. Like I cried about it, like for real. Like I really, I guess I just got homesick. Although things were going well in Columbus, but I wasn't able to play. And that hurt. I wasn't playing, and I wasn't helping this team out, and watching loss after loss after loss. Um, it disturbed me, and it was really hard for me to deal with that. And like I said, that break, I went home. I really didn't want to come back. I'm glad I did. Things got better once I got back, and like you said, we went through that season where Mike Red was, you know, freshman of the year. He played unbelievable basketball. Second highest scoring freshman in the country, doing spectacular things. But we just kept coming up short, night after night, and that was hard to watch. But at the same time, I was so encouraged because at practice, I think we worked so hard. Like I was busting my ass on the court every single day. Practice was my games, and I took it serious, and I approached it that way because I looked at the bigger picture. Like when I'm able to play, like I want to be able to help change this program. I want to be able to help these guys win. Being in a program now that hadn't won since probably what '92. Jim Jackson before he left, and then we was on a streak where there was no tournament appearances. No nothing happening, and I wanted to be a part of that turnaround. And thank God I was.
And I think one part of that decision from BC to Ohio State probably was also the fact that, and there could be a 15-year-old listening to this right now
Hmm.
who doesn't remember a world where transferring
Yeah.
wasn't almost taboo. I mean, at this
Hmm.
point, you look at Ohio State's team this year. You look at your starting point guard
Yeah.
transfer. You look at your starting center is going to be a transfer, whether it's Josh Ojawuna, who transferred in from Baylor and sits a year,
Yeah.
or Andrea Yelovich. I mean, transferring is just normal in college basketball.
Hmm.
It's what you do. It's normal in college sports.
Yes.
That wasn't the case back then. So it was a huge unknown for you as well in terms of not a lot of people do this. Am I fit for this?
Yeah. And it's not like mentally it was tough because now like you have to sit out not because you're injured or you did anything wrong. You have to sit out because you chose to go to another school and that was just the rules, which was very hard to deal with. Like I can't explain to you how much that hurt me, that I wasn't able to play. But what I did in the meantime was, and I think it helped me. I played everywhere in the city. Like it didn't matter if there was, the place the hoop was open. I played at the hoop. I would go to rec centers. I was going to the other colleges. I was on campus playing at Larkins, at Jesse Owens. I was playing. I played at the courts on campus outside. I played everywhere because for me it was just like I just needed to play. Yeah, I had stuff with the team. We had our workouts. We had practice, all of that. But when I was finished with that, I was still going to play more ball because I knew that I couldn't play this year. So I need to stay in the mix as much as possible. And I'm just grateful that I did. And I think one thing that really helped me was that summer. I went to that year? I went to Greece. Was that the year I went to Greece? Yeah, I think I went to Greece. I did. I went to Greece that year on a select team, and was able to get some good quality games in. We played against a lot of professional teams over in Greece. Spent a couple weeks over there because after sitting out, I hadn't played no organized ball for a year. Summer league doesn't count, open gyms doesn't count. It's a very different ball when you got referees and strategies and everything that comes with it. And I hadn't been accustomed to it because I sat out, so it was a whole year removed. So I needed that. I needed those reps, and going overseas playing in that select team really helped me out. It got my feet wet. Mike Red was there along with me, so I got a chance to play with the guy that become my backcourt mate, and we were able to start to create. Although we were doing it in practice, it's different in the game. We were able to create that bond, that kind of that that chemistry between he and I.
So take me through again. I think the journey from your journey from Boston College to Ohio State is so fascinating, especially because you had to sit out for that year.
Hmm.
If I'm a fly on the wall, that first conversation you have with Jim O'Brien
Ooh.
of, hey, I'm going to transfer. I don't know who reaches out to who or what the rules are at that point, but take me through that first conversation and how you thought this could be a real opportunity for me to go to Columbus.
Oh, that's easy. So um, I remember being in my place. I was in college at BC and turning on the television, and I see Jim O'Brien walking through St. John's Arena. Right.
Is that the first time you found out that he was
Yes.
gone?
This is the first time I heard
Wow.
about what was going on. And then there was a meeting called. So, we all, go to county forum and there's a meeting. And coach is there and he says, listen, this is what's going on, yada yada, gives the whole deal about how he's leaving, going to Ohio State. And I remember just sitting there and all I could think of was like, damn, what does this mean for me? Selfishly, I'm sure everyone that was in that room thought about themselves at that
Yeah.
moment. Um, so the meeting gets finished, right? And coach wants me to come to his office and talk to him. So I go into the office, and I'm sitting in the office and we're talking, and he's explaining, obviously the opportunity at Ohio State, and there was some things going on at BC as well that kind of pushed him out. I don't know if it was all, wasn't all contract, precise. It was a lot of other stuff like kids getting to school. BC was making it really tough for us to do some things we wanted to do there. So he found an opportunity and he left, right? So now he comes to me and he says to me, like, obviously I'm leaving, yada yada. He's like, but I'm telling you right now, I would love for you to come with me. He didn't put any pressure on me, but he put it out there, laid it on the table. At that time in my head, I'm thinking I ain't going nowhere. Like I damn sure as hell ain't going to no Ohio State because, you know, I don't know. I first of all, I haven't heard anything about Ohio State in years. Ohio State hasn't won anything. They wasn't doing anything. My class, I know they had a really good class come in That was a really good freshman class, the same class that I'm in. But I hadn't heard any noise. They weren't really doing anything, so I really wasn't checking for Ohio State. So in my mind, I'm thinking, oh hell no, I'm not going to Ohio State. Um, some time went on, started setting some visits, different schools, things like that, and my whole mind had changed when I came to Columbus. Had a chance to visit, I spent time with the coaches, spent time with, current players. I was able to see what the program could be, and that kind of helped change my mind. But that initial conversation with Coach O'Brien, he put it on the table and told me that he would want me to go with him to Ohio State, and I really wasn't feeling it at first. I wasn't at all, but I'm glad I came around to it. But it also worked out very well because it wasn't just O'Brien, Paul Bancardi, who one of the assistants, Rick Boyages, Dave Spiller, you know, these guys I spent a lot of time with. Whether I was getting recruited by, Bancardi and Spiller when I was in high school, but when I got to college, like all these guys played vital roles in my life and my development as a young man, not just basketball, but off the court. Ben Carter and I was extremely close, and he was kind of like good cop or Brown's bad cop. When I was going through what I was going through, my trials and tribulation as a young man trying to figure out college basketball and life and being a local kid and dealing with all of this, and then my name is getting bigger than lights and all of this stuff. Help had someone like him help me keep me even keel. Then I had, Coach Boyages who I would work with a lot. Boyages would show me a lot of film. I would learn so much from him in the game mentally, and that was such a plus for me. Then I had Dave Spiller who would also push me. And Dave had this thing where he'd make these tapes and he'd give me tapes of different players to kind of watch and study their game and kind of help me out. And then O'Brien obviously was the head coach, but as people know, you don't spend the most time with the head coach. It's the assistants you spend a lot of time with. So I had all these components and they all had left. These guys that I've known for the last 3 or 4 years all left and they were going with him. So that also helped my decision. The fact that the coaching staff that I was, you know, that I was accustomed to, they were all going to be gone. And following the staff and coming to Ohio State was a big plus because I was so familiar with them already.
Mhm. And I think, I guess, one other question there, as you make that transition, you mentioned how hard that first year was not playing.
Hmm.
And you get to practice, you get to be around the team. But when it's game time, you got to go play Purdue. You don't get to go out there.
Yep.
Was there anything that changed? I would assume part of the coaching staff really helped walk you through that. Was there anything that happened in those relationships where maybe you came back from Christmas and you're like, you know what, I can do this, or maybe it took all the way until March? Like, at what point were you like, okay, like I'm gonna be okay. It's just gonna be tough for now, but I'm gonna get on the floor next year and continue to play basketball.
I just think it was the daily work. For me personally, it was the challenge that I had in front of me of sitting out this year, but how do I get better, right? How do I help these other guys that are on the team now become better? So when I'm able to play, it'll all work its way out, right? So there's one thing, and I'm sure you know this about athletes. Whatever's going on in our lives is gonna go on, right? But once I touch that court, once I get in between those lines, everything's different. Things don't matter as much. I'll deal with those later. So regardless of how I was feeling, when it was time for me to get on that court and play and practice or go lift weights or whatever that was gonna help me basketball wise, I was where I was supposed to be. And I was feeling in my heart of hearts like, yo, I'm gonna be okay. Because I could see the pieces. I could see the Jason Singleton, the Sean Coleman, Michael Redd. I seen these guys like, okay, they're talented. They have some ability. We just have some pieces that we need to fill in. And I knew that I was a big piece of this. So I just knew that I had to dedicate myself on making sure I was healthy, I was prepared physically, mentally, emotionally. Because there's one thing, anyone you cross anybody who knows me will tell you one thing about me, that I do not like losing. Like losing for me is so painful. I'm not saying I don't know how to lose because you have to learn how to lose to really know how to win, right? So for me, that was never a thought in my head of not being a tournament team or not being in a mix to win the Big Ten because I've always been in that situation. So I took it upon myself, like, no, I have to get good. I have to be better. And then I have to try to help these guys out because there was no way in hell that I would have been able to handle going one in whatever it is or two in whatever. Like playing without playing for something for me just wouldn't fly. And I know this about myself. So you have to understand, you put me in that mix at 19, 20 years old, and I don't want to lose the amount of work that I'm gonna put in to make sure that doesn't happen. And that's just what I did.
One other question, and then I want to get to the Final Four team.
Hmm.
So, as you evaluate your decision, I don't know if you took other visits, if you had other programs you were interested in, but could Boston College have backed up the Brinks truck? Let's say NIL exists in that
Hmm.
era. Could they have backed up the Brinks truck and kept you, or were you a sealed, signed, sealed, deliver? I'm going to Columbus.
Man, I wish I could reveal some shit I don't want to reveal, but uh nah, it was yeah, regardless of what they backed up, I was leaving. Yeah, I was gonna leave. Um, because at that moment, it was about my future, and they brought in Al Skinner, who's a tremendous coach. Al Skinner's a great coach. I was hearing whispers of Mike Jarvis, and my timeline is I kind of waited a long time because I wanted to see who that coach was gonna be, and if that coach ended up being Mike Jarvis, I think Mike Jarvis was at GW at the time. I might have not come to Ohio State. No knock on Al Skinner. I thought Al Skinner was tremendous. Got to know him a little bit when I was still there, and he became the coach. But there was just something that the equity was already built in Coach O'Brien and the staff. That was already built, and I was built on the loyalty. Um, we had a family component, and what sticks out in my mind is during a visit. Coach O'Brien. He was there with my family, and how he spoke to my grandmother. When he sat down and he told my grandmother, she asked him like, "You're gonna take care of my grandson?" Because realistically, my grandmother didn't know nothing about the basketball. She know basketball is, but she didn't know the ins and outs of the recruit and all of that. She was just in there to listen, and she was worried about my well being. And he promised that I would always be okay. He would make sure that he kept his word, and that always stood out in my mind. That the relationship that coaching staff have built with my family, it became more than just player coach type thing. So that helped the decision. And I don't think, regardless if there was an NIL and they threw the money, I probably still would have left because I think my stock would have been high enough that I would have made just as much here anyway. So it really wouldn't have mattered.
All right, we'll let you leave it at that. When we get done recording, I'll ask some follow ups on that.
Yeah, all right, cool.
So let's get to the Final Four team. All right.
Yes.
So you had the interesting perspective of I was with this team. I sat out, but I was around a lot of these guys,
Hmm.
and flat out we weren't very good.
Yes.
Next year, go to the Final Four. Obviously,
Hmm.
there's a lot of time in between that where you're wondering what is this team going to look like.
Yep.
When did you know? It may not have been until the NCAA tournament. But when did you know? You know what? This team's going to be special. This team's going to be really good.
Well, I knew the whole time because I kind of put my foot in my mouth early. I was asked, how good do you think this team will be, yada yada, and I was like, I think we'll be a good team. We'll compete. I was like, I want to go to the Final Four. Like I said this out of my own mouth before the season started. I said it to the media, and we're coming off a team that was last place in the Big Ten the year before. And everyone looked at me like I was crazy. And I never forget it because Coach O'Brien, after he spoke to me, and he was kind of like, yo, like, what are you talking about? He was, he wasn't mad at me, but it was in the sense of like, well, you say this or you got to back it up. Because now you're putting a bullseye on your guys by saying you think you'll be good after everyone witnessed what happened a year before. So I personally had a good feeling about it. I was already confident in my own skills and what I was going to bring to the table. But I was watching development of Mike Red, the development of Ken Johnson, who was coming along now. I had going to the senior year, Jason Singleton and Sean Coleman, who were also captains along with myself. We brought in George Reese, who came, local kid. George Reese came, could play. Got to see him play a little bit. I'm like, oh, he's going to be a good piece. We had two really good freshmen, and Brian Brown and Boban Savovich, and then also there was Will Dudley. So all the pieces. We had a Shamar Herring that came from Detroit. So now we had some size. We had Boban, Deshaun. We had guys that could shoot. John Sanderson was there. Then we had guys that could slash. So I'm looking at it from a very strategic, you know, point of view of, okay, I got the ball in my hands. I got this to my right, this to my left. I got this in the center. We can play defense this kind of way. We can play this style of basketball. And I just knew it would work. And also understanding the style of play that O'Brien had, it was very different than what you played in the Big Ten. The offense that we ran wasn't being ran in the Big Ten. Yeah, teams seen it the year before when we were trash, but they didn't see it with me running it, which I already knew how to run the system. I've done it for 2 years and was very successful with it. Now I add these pieces that I have with me. So I'm working all this in my head. So I had a feeling we were gonna be good. But then with season starts and we have our rough patches, we start off okay. We had our little bumps. Um, we had lost to Toledo at Toledo. And that was pretty heartbreaking. Obviously, we're the biggest school. We lose to a team like Toledo, which they had a good team that year. But the turning point, I think, where we started opening people's eyes, and I think other guys on the team started feeling more confident about it, was when we went to the Puerto Rican Classic. And we went out there, we won some really good games, we beat some other really good teams, and we won that. And the time we spent there as a team, um, it was very impactful. Yes, we won on the court. Yes, we grew as a team. And when we left that trip, we played Miami, down in Miami, and I think we lost. We still have a hangover, from the excitement of winning in Puerto Rico. But there was a sense of confidence that changed within the group. And guys felt like, okay, we won something. You got to understand now, Ohio State hasn't won anything for years. The majority of guys on the team hadn't won anything. I don't think any of the guys on the team had won state titles, things like that. I think at the time I probably was the only one. So now you give guys a taste of victory and winning something. Now you become more hungry because you want that taste again. And then after that, we took off. We hit the Big Ten season running, um, and there was no looking back. And you just seen week after week the confidence of our group just grow, and it just kept growing and kept growing. We became tighter as a unit, and yeah, we had our bumps and bruises, in between those times, but the confidence I thought remained, throughout, and then we took that all the way in until we got to the tournament, and what happens when you get to that point, you have to go on a run, and we went on a great run, um, that really most people didn't expect us to do. Most of the guys didn't expect us to do it. I just remember that Jason Singleton was saying to me all the time. He always call me 1-2. He'd be like 1-2, 1-2. Like, listen, like we need a ring. He's like, I want a ring. He had been in school now going on 4 years and win anything. He wanted a ring. So I kept that in the back of my mind. Nishan and Jason, the two seniors about to go out, they don't have any kind of hardware. And I was more worried about those guys having hardware. I wanted them to win something more than anything. And that was more fuel to the fire.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly impactful. You look at even the trip Ohio State took this summer, just a couple of weeks or last
Yep.
week at this point, that people around the program will mention the extra practice time, like that's huge. Getting to play with each
Yes.
other, that's huge. But really, the biggest thing is that bond that you get when you
Yes.
go to, especially overseas, if you go into a foreign country with different languages and you got to figure out how to navigate. And
hmm
it sounds corny, but you got to work together just to get
Yep.
around, do all those types of things. That really does bond guys to each other. So as I look at this year's team, it can be exciting because you get those
Yes.
extra 10 days to be together. You go to a foreign country, you're with each other for that much longer, and it can mean something. And it meant something for your group as well.
hmm
So that Final Four team, there's our does Ohio State claim it? Does it not? There's all these different types of things with it. But just from your perspective as a guy on the team, take me through the trouble, quote unquote, that Ohio
Yeah.
State that Jim O'Brien gets into, and just how do you see that as a player on the team? How does it impact the legacy of that group?
It should impact us at all. Our banner should be hanging at the Shaughnessy Center. The practice gym, you should see it on the wall. Um, it should be in the record books in the university, everything, because we didn't do it, right? There's a lot of stories on what happened, what didn't happen, yada yada, and it has something to do with Alex Radenovich, who didn't even end up coming to Ohio State, went to the draft, about him giving some money, but then he gave it back, or whatever the case may be. But you're gonna punish us about someone who never even came to university, and we did all this work on the court. No one gave it to us. We actually did it. So it hurt, you know, it still hurts to be in that arena all the time, and there's nothing that says this is what you guys did. So all these years, right? Since 1999, it was up for a couple years, and they took it down. What they took it down like 04, 05, right? So it's been probably 20 years. People has been coming in and out of that building and have not seen what we accomplished. And we know what we done. Like we did it, and they don't speak about it, but it hurts. And I think we all hate it. We all want to be recognized. And I think realistically, now with the whole NIL and people getting paid, they need to start going back and fixing some of these problems and give us our respect due because we earned it. It's something I've never gotten over. At the time I was playing pro ball, I was overseas when I started hearing the whispers about what's going on here. Um, so when it was all going down, I wasn't around. Then you come home and you find out, but they're about to take your wins away and the banner's coming down and all this stuff. And I sat with the NCAA. I had a long meeting with them for hours. It was just a bad time. I know O'Brien went through it, broke up that staff and everybody's career went different ways. But more importantly, and I say this all the time, when something like that happens, right, what does it takes away from a lot of, like, okay, for instance, if we're talking about NIL, right? Your name, image, and likeness. What does that do for a player if you have on your resume that you went to the Final Four, right? You won a Big Ten title and you come back to school, or you're looking for work or certain things in the community. Like you get to have that badge of honor with you, right? So for myself, I don't think it affected me as much or doesn't affect the Mike Red as much, but I think it affect the other guys that they don't get to have this badge of honor of being a part of a team that went to the Final Four after the history of Ohio State not reaching the Final Four for 30 years or something. You see what I'm saying? So the implications I think trickle down a lot more and affected a lot more people than they really realize. And I just hope one day it can get rectified. And before I leave this earth, I would love to see that banner back in the Shaughnessy Center or somewhere on campus. Um, because there was a lot of sweat, there was a lot of tears, a lot of hard work put into that. And you punished the people that put the time in for no reason. I don't think we should have been punished for it, but that's for another time because football was going through what they were going through at the same time, right? But yet we didn't take away the national championship. Realistically, that the stuff they were going through is probably worse than basketball, but someone had to take the fall. And at a school like Ohio State, basketball's taking that fall. If we was at North Carolina, we was at Duke, we was at Kentucky, it'd be the other way around. Football would have taken the hit. The basketball would have lived on. It would have kept this stuff. Why are there basketball schools and blue bloods in basketball, and that's what we are in football. So I understand the politics of it, but at the end of the day, the people who did they need to get it right because our banner belongs in that building.
I can't imagine how hard it is to. It's one thing if something happens to where you make a decision and you break a rule, or a coach breaks a rule, or a staffer breaks a rule, and it materially impacts
Yes.
the talent or the output on a team. And this is an Ohio State podcast, so obviously it's so easy to bring up, look what Michigan football did 3 years ago, or whatever the
Yeah.
case was, where they're accused and it's been confirmed where you're literally stealing signs in a way that is not allowed. Can you steal
Hmm.
signs? Yes. Their method, not allowed. That materially impacts how you
Yes.
play against another team. Your scenario or other
Mhm.
scenarios out there, much different, in which Jim O'Brien, I think, gave it was some amount of money to a family member of a player who doesn't come to Ohio State. It's
Mhm.
not a huge amount, but it did not at all materially impact what happened on the court. I get there's NCAA violation. I get it,
Yeah.
but at some point, I mean, my question to you would be: after all that, you're still around the program.
Mhm.
Michael Red is still around the program. I think every game that I went to last year, he has no idea who I am. I'm rubbing shoulders with him. He has no idea who Tim Miller is. But I saw him literally at every game I was at last year.
Mhm.
You're still around the team to this day.
Mhm.
Why?
Because of the love we have for the university. I think it's something special. Our brotherhood that we have at this university is second to none. I know a lot of people talk about it, but I think we really live it. We know our football lives it, our basketball lives it. We kind of coexist. A lot of relationships are built together. Um, but that's why, we are very invested in the future of this program, this school, this university. And that's why we hang around. That's why most of us still live in the area. You know, um, you put that jersey on, you wear it, you do good things with it. When you're finished and you play in other places, like, yeah, you might love other places, but a lot just doesn't compare to what you've done here in college. And I think that it's that way because, you kind of grow up together. And the things that the work and the time that we had put in, and a lot of athletes do. I'm not saying we just do it and the other team people don't, because we all do. It turned out materialized as something very special. Like we had real tears winning. You know what I'm saying? We had real fights in practice. We had real battles, like things that, when you think of if you grew in your household, when you grow up, the things that you go through as a family, like we went through that as a team, right? That bond that we created. And so when we're finished and you graduate and some guys going to play ball, some guys, going to the work world, whatever it may be, we don't forget those things. Those things kind of form us and make us who we become. So we're good, we're done. We look back. We want the next generation, the next group to go through that, to have what we've had because it's so special. Like our like that team, we have a group chat. We're all part of it. Guys always chime in. Like we really call each other family. Like we all know each other's kids. And we watch each other's kids grow up. We have Jason Singleton now, whose son was probably the best player in the state of Ohio last year. Watching little Jason come along is unbelievable. Nashawn Coleman, he has a daughter who's at Columbus Academy who she hurt herself last year, but she's a really, really good player. She's up and coming. Brian Brown has some young boys coming up. It's just so, look at these things and you say, you know what? We're not these people that went to school here. It was just a pit stop. We played ball, we left, and that's it. No, it's deeper than that for us. So for us to be back here to, to have relationship with the younger guys, to, help out in practice or have vet weeks and things like that, that's huge. It's always been huge, and I can go back from day one. As soon as I was done, I was always back here in the summertime. I love the Sullingers. First it was JJ, you know, and then Jaron comes. You know what I'm saying? Like those, I love those guys. I've been around, obviously the Odin, the Conley, D'Angelo Russell. You can go keep going. Fush Cheatham. I can go down the line, and then obviously I get into the side of having guys like Dwayne Washington, EJ Liddell. I can. It's just so many guys, and you just want to help the next guy forward. And to their credit as well, is when it's their turn, they do it. I did it for those guys. Probably my favorite Buckeye, Evan Turner. That class of Evan Turner, right? Diebler, Lighty, Lauderdale, like those guys, Buford. Like those guys are probably my favorite. I love those guys. I love when I was able to come home and watch them play on break. I watched all their games overseas when I was, still playing ball, and it was I was so happy to watch these young men develop and become who they were because I see them in the summertime. We talk, and now when they were done, they turn around and do it for the next guys. See what I'm saying? So it's something that's passed down, and I got it from Ron Stokes, Troy Taylor, Clark Kellogg, Jim Jackson. You know what I'm saying? So we take the torch and we keep passing it. So to find guys that are from the program that's not are still around the program, like that's hard to do because everybody tries to stay involved as much as possible.
Yeah, and one thing I hear in just this entire conversation, how much care you have for the next generations, these next players who are going to come back, and
Hmm.
20 years from now they'll be sitting where you are right now,
Yeah.
probably telling their story about Ohio State basketball as well. You want to impact, you want to invest, and yet again, I feel like it's just got to be hard to look back and say everything that we did,
Yeah.
and that banner's not there. So is that something that I know it's probably above the pay grade of a Jake Diebler type, but have you brought that up to Jake and said like, "Hey man, like we were a part of this. We
Hmm.
want to see that banner there. Can you help us get there?" What's that process like?
Well, I don't know. That's not something that I've spoken to Jake about, but something I could. I think we're going to take it a step further because Mike Red and I have spoke about it.
Mhm.
Like I think it's going to be to the point to where we sit down with the athletic director and have a conversation.
Yeah,
You sit with the athletic director. Let's see if there's someone we can go to NCAA and we can figure this out.
mhm.
Because there has to be something. I think it happened with somebody recently, probably a year or two ago, where they reinstated something. But with what goes on now in college basketball, they need to go back and start redoing these things. Because, like you said, whatever happened, it had nothing to do with impacting winning and losing for us at all. If that had happened and the player had came and he helped us win, then I understand.
Yeah,
But if this guy had never helped us win, had nothing to do with us losing the game or anything, then it shouldn't affect us. It shouldn't affected our program. If there was a beef between what the coach done in that situation, that's got to be handled with the coach. It shouldn't be we're punished for it as players, as student athletes, and we were, and that's the sad part about it. So that's been in the back of my mind. A couple of us have spoken about it, and I think in due time we will start to work on that.
let's imagine a day where this is reinstated. It's you,
Hmm.
it's Singleton, it's Red. All those guys come back, and you guys are honored within the shot.
Hmm.
What does that moment feel like? What is uh the overall feeling for all you guys to be back there and say, you know what, this was done the right way?
Tons of emotions. Like, and I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm not afraid to admit it. I will probably cry. Like, I feel emotional right now thinking about it. Because when we think about these things, we think about those moments, right? And for me personally, I don't think about the wins and losses or the game that we won to get there. Like that's not my thought. My thought pattern is when I walked into that locker room after I did my interview and we did all the celebrating on the court and just seeing the joy, all the hugging, the high fiving, the tears, all that, that was going on. Those are the moments that I remember. And if that banner is put back up in the Shaughnessy Center, if we were all sitting there looking at that, that's what I would think of. Because those things that happened as a reason from the result of the camaraderie and the relationship that we built when no one else was watching. So it would be extremely emotional. Obviously, a happy day for all of us, but a time where I would shed tears.
So I think one thing too that does need to be mentioned, if nothing ever happens with the banner, if
Hmm.
these dreams don't come to fruition, the one thing that I'm thankful for is that I mean, I grew up, my dad allowed me to fall in love with sports. We went to the NIT game of what, 07, 08 season, I believe,
Okay, yeah.
of Ohio State, right before they went to play, I think, UMass in the championship. Um, those teams may be wrong, but I mean, you have these memories that you have with family members, with friends, and regardless of whether or not that banner is there, thousands upon thousands of people have been impacted through your story,
Hmm.
through the legacy of a Michael Redd, through Jason Singleton. Like you said, his son now is going to go play at Harvard, and there's just so many ripple effects that sometimes for me it's like, screw the banner, who cares? Like, you
Yeah.
can't take away a lot of that stuff that's so important. So there is that. There's also the conversation behind Ohio State would like to raise more banners at this point. Jake Diebler's
Yes.
there, and your perspective is very, very unique here because
Hmm.
you've been on staff in the NBA for several years. Um, you have a unique perspective. There's no question. Everyone knows the cream of the crop in coaching is in the NBA. There's
Hmm.
no better place to find basketball coaches in the NBA. You sustained a career there. So take me through from your vantage point. What do you see in Jake Diebler at this point, kind of from year zero to where he takes over as interim to now starting to craft his roster, recruiting, and overall game planning too? I've been doing this for a couple years. Take me through.
Yeah.
What do you think about Jake Diebler overall?
Well, first and foremost, when you know Jake, you know he's a guy with tons of energy.
Mhm.
Enthusiastic. He's energetic. He wants to get everybody going, and you can see the biggest difference in Jake of, and well, first off, when someone becomes a head coach, like that's very difficult when you've never been a head coach before, right? And to see the strides that this young man has made as a coach of a university like Ohio State, the decision making, like I said, he's always been a really good recruiter, but I think I see a different perspective than you or most people are going to see. I get to see the relationships he builds with the players, which is probably the most important side of it. Because I go back to my playing days, right? I spoke earlier about the relationship with the coaches, the relationship O'Brien had with my family. Like those things mean something. They matter. Like they don't show up on a scoreboard, but they really do. You just don't see the work that's done behind closed doors. So I think Jake has improved on just his relationship skills. The way he communicates with the players, his staff, shit, Buckeye Nation. Like you have to be able to do all those things before you even start with the X's and O's. But in that aspect, he's gotten better. Now you get into your third year under your belt doing these things. Um, just watching him in vet week dealing with the players when he's talking to everyone afterwards, he allows the vets the stage to say what we have to say. But I always watch him from afar and see the type of messages he's putting out. Um, and he and I, Jake needs to sit his ass down a little bit because all he wants to do is get out there on the court and play and run around and get in the mix. That's why he got hurt last year. Like back up a little bit. You're all right. You're not 30 no more. But his energy is contagious, and he's doing an unbelievable job. Right, but people don't care about all of that. At the end of the day, did you win? Did you lose? Like we have to be relevant in the Big Ten. We have to get to the tournament, which we did last year, but we have to play the second weekend. Like those are the things that we want. And yeah, I want it as a former player, but I know Jake wants that more than anybody as the head coach, right? So our job as alumni, and we support the university, we support the team, is to back him up as much as possible. I mean, that's why you'll see a lot of guys around be involved in different things. Why? Because we want to help out. And a lot of that, it's backing up the coach, helping out recruiting when players come around, just showing the support that we have because that is needed. So I think Jake's doing a tremendous job, and I think he's going to continue to get better. So I think that will be a team that you have to watch out for. It's hard to kind of decipher where we will be in the Big Ten, what kind of race we'll be in, but we have a good talent level. With Junie being back is awesome, and Bynum for me, he's a pro. All right, obviously we have the young All American, but you don't know how that's going to develop. That takes time. It takes time for the transfers to come in and kind of make their niche. But we have a couple key pieces, and we have a coaching staff that's been there, so that kind of helps it push it along a little faster.
So you've been around this team a couple of times at this point.
Yep.
There's obviously a lot of questions about who's standing out. Some players that I've talked about a lot is Jimmy Williams. Sounds like
Hmm.
he's going to be huge for Ohio State off the bench this upcoming year. Anthony Thompson comes in as a five-star freshman, projected lottery pick. What does Justin Pippen bring from Cal? You talk
Yep.
obviously John Mobley Jr. what he can do. He returns, and that's huge. Questions about center about Andrea Yelovich and Josh Ojawana and
Yep.
Ivan Nagovin. There's just and LJ Smith comes in as well as a
Yeah.
five-star
Exactly.
who reclassifies. who have you seen really stick out the most to you from your time watching practices, watching workouts, stuff like that? Who's impressed you the most this summer?
Um, I'm just gonna stick with the guys I know. It's got to Bynum is the guy for me personally, and here's why I say that. I'm not discrediting any of the guys you just named. None of the transfers that came in, the big time freshmen that we have, and the reason why I'm saying is because these NIL transfer things been going on for how long now? What, 4 years now? 5 years?
Mhm.
We haven't had one that has become an all Big Ten anything. So I've learned not put my eggs in the basket of the guys that's moving around, bouncing around. Because being a guy who transferred into a new program, I understand how hard it is to come in and make your mark, come into a different conference, and really hard to put your footprint into something and take off. So I said, you know what? I'm gonna sit back and let those guys develop and watch them come along. But the guys that's gonna make this ship go is the two guys that were here last year, and that's Mobley and that's Bynum. Those two guys right now, I think we will go as far as they take us. The freshman has time to come along because think about this time last year, people didn't know who Amari Bynum was. But if you watched him last summer, you would see flashes and say, man, this kid, after a while, is going to be pretty good. Second half of the season, he took off. Not saying anything that happened for Thompson, but I hope so. He has the ability to do so. You know, he has the talent, he has all that. But it takes time. So for me, I think all those guys, I think they have their days with doing things good. Some have good practices, some not so well. Um, they have a lot of good flashy moments. I watch them and see some of the guys are great in Puerto Rico, but we'll see when this season roll around, we get in between those lines, which new face will arrive on the scene and take off. And it's been very difficult for us to have a guy in this program that arrived from somewhere else and took off. And so I'm not putting my eggs in those basket. My basket is Mobley and Bynum. You guys been here before. You've been in the trenches doing it. Let's take off and see your leadership skills and bring these other guys along.
Yeah, this is clearly the deepest team Jake Diebler has had. I think you could also say it's
Yep.
the most talented team that Jake Diebler has had as well. So I think expectations are going to be higher than they've ever been for him.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll see if Ohio State can live up to it. But Scoonie, I appreciate you telling these stories, sharing a whole bunch about just your emotions and how you feel about the program and all those different types
So,
of things. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here today, and we'll look forward to having you again next summer should you choose to join. And we'll look forward to seeing what Ohio State can do this year.
hey, Tim, thanks for having me and thanks for having this. You know, this is needed, and I'm sure Buckeye Nation appreciates it.